Blockchain, what is it? About 10 years ago, most of us had never heard of the word cryptocurrencies, let alone blockchain. And now we hear about it almost every day and how they are a revolution that is changing the world as we know it. The potential for blockchain technology is immense and has now become interwoven into a copious number of industries, such as the pharmaceuticals industry and many financial aspects, such as cryptocurrencies and NFTs. How are blockchain technologies used in these industries, and what will the effect of these technologies have in the future? These are some of the key topics that we'll cover in today's panel discussion. It just so happens that we are lucky enough to live in Zug, also known as Crypto Valley, with over 400 companies that work with blockchain and cryptocurrencies having settled their headquarters here in Zug, such as Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency in the world. Welcome everyone to our YFS 2022 panel on Sustainable Development Goal number 8, specifically economic growth in the aspect of adoption and development of blockchain. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gabriel Swain, a grade 11 student, and today I will be your MC for this panel. It is with great pleasure to introduce to you our three speakers for today, all professionals on this topic: Maria Abatsova, Dr. Thomas Punz, and Sam Chadwick. Maria Abatsova, during the last 4 years, she's been working in the blockchain industry, organizing major global conferences and meetups in locations such as New York, London, Singapore, and Hong Kong. She has also been focusing on conducting partnerships with various market members and has developed a great network of blockchain influencers, investors, and others. Sam Chadwick is the head of emerging tech at UBS, where he leads the organization's evaluation of emerging technology. Prior to joining UBS in 2019, he led the blockchain strategy for Refinitiv. Sam has a background in product strategy and product management, having worked in New York, Hong Kong, and Switzerland. Sam currently lives in Zug and was a founding member of the Crypto Valley Association. Sam also has a master's in financial strategy from the University of Oxford. Dr. Thomas Punz was an experimental particle physicist at ETH Zurich, working for CERN in Geneva. There he was designing and building the large particle accelerator you might all have heard about, and now even discovering the famous Higgs particle. Currently, he is the CEO and founder of Securitine, an international company specializing in top-notch cybersecurity, who support many companies with all kinds of services around cybersecurity and cryptography, including blockchain, smart contracts, and cryptocurrencies. I would now like to hand over to Max and Tommy, who are moderating today's panel and managing the questions.
Thanks, Gabe. My name is Max, and I'm currently in grade 11, and I'll be organizing the tech and questions of this panel. I think I speak for all of us by saying we're all very excited to be hosting this panel today. We have about 45 minutes together in which Tommy and I will engage in a conversation with our guests, as well as provide some time for the audience questions after the main discussion. Please use the Mentee code to ask any questions at any time during the conversation. And with that, I will pass to Tommy, who is our panel moderator for today.
Hi everyone, my name is Tommy. I'm in grade 12, and it's my great pleasure to welcome everyone to this YFS panel. As Gabe said, it's a real privilege to be able to spend some time with our speakers who have achieved so much in the blockchain and fintech sector. Let's start with a question for the audience. How much do you know about blockchain? Using Mentimeter, which I'm sure you've already used in some of the other panels of today, you'll be able to give a score between 1 and 10. Here's the code right here, 99515499, and you can score how much you know about blockchain. And we'll give a second here for the scores to come in, and they're gonna average out to show a score. So while that goes on, I'm gonna keep that on, and I'm gonna move to the speakers to ask our first question, which is, what are blockchains and how do they improve upon our current methods? So Thomas Punz, this one's for you. Go.
So now technology issue solved. So thank you everybody, let's say, to have me here. It's really exciting, and also to have the chance to speak here, especially also with Sam and Maria. Yeah, so what is blockchain? Blockchain is a public digital ledger used to record transaction across many decentralized or distributed computers in a peer-to-peer network. You all might have experienced or heard already about BitTorrent or other file sharing platforms, and blockchain and also cryptocurrencies are something similar in that sector. So you have different computers in that network, and every computer is adding so-called blocks to the digital ledger. And the block is a container of data or any kind of information. And then in the end, the chain is linking all these different blocks together. And since we're in a different distributed environment with many, many nodes, we have also additional challenges to overcome. So one is consistency. Then you have, let's say, record keeping and all the audit trails, because in the end, you would like to make sure, let's say, that your Bitcoin in the end is residing in your wallet and not somebody else. And yeah, so the whole blockchain, the whole technology, the blocks and the chain, they need to solve that issue. And blockchain, let's say, appeared, say, a decade ago, but it did not reinvent the wheel. So it makes use of a lot of existing technology that is well proven, well established, and it's combining it in a new, innovative way. Yeah, so we have, let's say, cryptographic schemes that are used to add new blocks to the chain without altering or dampering, let's say, with the blocks that have there before. And also use the word that it's always adding. So the blockchain is always additive, which means only information can be added, but let's say never removed. And that makes it quite good, and let's say also very trustable, because in the end it's transparent, and let's say it cannot easily be tampered with. And yeah, since we're adding block after block, we're getting a longer and longer chain, and that's why it's called a blockchain. That's cool, right? So when we add blocks on a node, we have a distributed system. So what are the different nodes doing? So they need first to validate if the block is correct, if it's, let's say, valid. And if it's successful, this validation, then this block is added to the chain. And in order also to do that, there are, let's say, several mathematical tasks to be solved. And these are only there, let's say, to create some effort, that it's not so easy for everybody just to introduce or inject fake blocks. Yeah, so all of this is then doing its part in making the whole blockchain secure and protecting the integrity. There are different kind of blockchains today, and I think everybody of you heard about Bitcoin already and Ethereum, correct? Maybe that could be a question, would be interested in that. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are both public blockchains. Yeah, so this means so everybody in the internet can have a look on the different blocks, and let's see what is going on. So in principle, also every kind of manipulation would be immediately, let's say, appearing and be transparent to everybody. And yeah, also when somebody updates something on the blockchain, everybody in the network will know about that. So this creates transparency and trust.
We're gonna have to move on to the next question. Just following up with you actually, but it's also targeting Mary and Sam. What are some specific uses of blockchain? I know Thomas has kind of already talked about it, but we'd like to get your perspective on it.
I'm happy to go first on that one. So I think if you think about what a blockchain actually can do for you, right, it really does two things. So let's take an example. We're all going to Burger King. We could all go up and place our orders individually, or we could all give our money to Tommy and send him to the counter to order on behalf of all of us. Right, now the challenge there is we've actually got to trust Tommy with our money. Now, some of us may trust Tommy and some of us may not trust Tommy. So we have, in a distributed ledger, in a blockchain, the goal is not to have to trust a single individual. So we have use cases based on not needing to trust a single individual. The second thing that a blockchain does is that it is using computers in order to create and distribute this ledger and keep a record of all the transactions that Thomas was just talking about, right? So it's a network of computers. Now we could either use the computers to just store a list of the transactions, But what do computers do really well? Well, actually, they compute stuff. So what we can do is we can actually embed computer programs inside the transactions that are going over this network. So we're using the computers not only to store and synchronize the transactions, but also to run programs. So if you put those two things together, we don't have to trust a single party, and we can compute programs. There are so many things we can do with that, and I'm just going to give you two. One is flight insurance. Now, I mentioned this one because these guys went live this morning, actually. I think the announcement was about 3 hours ago. It's a company called Risk, and it allows you to insure in case your flight being late. Now, for any of you that have tried to do that, if you try to buy that insurance, you may have a very delayed flight, but it will take you weeks and weeks and weeks for the insurance to pay out, insurance companies to pay out. So what Risk enables you to do is put your money into a smart contract. And if the flight is delayed, then within 45 minutes or if the flight is delayed by more than 45 minutes, the smart contract will programmatically pay you out the insurance. You didn't need to put in an insurance claim. So you've got this programmatic element run by the computers, and you've also got this not needing to trust an intermediary. And I'll give you one more example there, crowdfunding. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kickstarter or any of these sort of crowdfunding platforms. When you want to run a crowdfunding campaign, you're going to need to trust that campaign with your money until the campaign has raised enough money, and then the startup or the campaign gets that money. And what we can do is use distributed ledger and these things called smart contracts in order to create a crowdfunding campaign. People can pay into that campaign, and if we reach the target goal by the time they get paid out, and if we don't, you get your money back. And we didn't need to trust an organization to manage our money. So Maria, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Sam. So one of the use cases of blockchain that I would like to mention as well are NFTs, and I would like to speak about that because I think this has been like the most popular and highly discussed topic in the crypto market during the last year. So those NFTs are non-fungible tokens. So a type of tokens that has two major characteristics. The first one is that it is unique, and the second one that is it is not interchangeable. So this means that, for example, if we compare it with other cryptocurrencies or even fiat currencies, if we take a Bitcoin, we can change it to another Bitcoin and it will make no differences. And same would be with the dollar. So it's like some unit and it has something that is equal to it. While for NFTs, it is some like technically unique thing, and it can be applied in many situations where this concept of uniqueness is important. So for example, the like most popular area of its current application is art and digital art. So it is possible to sell digital art and to provide this like ownership to a person to a particular piece of art. And if you would say that you can, like, what's the sense in buying a digital art object if you can just make a copy of it and it will look exactly the same, and what's the sense for me? So here the thing is like exactly with the traditional market, this is the difference between having the original of Monet, which does cost a lot of money and have the value, and a copy that would look the same, but it's not like proven that it is the original, and its price would go much lower. And this is not applied only in art, but can be in other areas. For example, if we talk about licenses or diplomas, currently you like if you are being hired, you need to show your diploma from a university. You need your employee would go to the university and check if this is the original, etc. And this takes time. But with this technology, that would be like much easier and faster. The authenticity of a certain document can be checked. And maybe another like difference which makes it in the area of art more a better tool for artists themselves. So first of all, it has been more like art is more accessible to public, and they are more eager to invest in it, which makes it possible for artists and digital artists to earn on their work and to have like some money to live, and art to be more well-paid area. And also the royalties come to the artists all the time. So if an artwork is bought and then sold for a high price, the creator of this artwork will all the time receive the royalties. So this is like the way for them to benefit from the growth of the price of the art. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I was just gonna show the mentee code because we've had some responses. So over here we can see that the average of all the responses we received is at a 3.8, with 26 people saying 0, 11 saying 3. So we can see that this is very useful panel. So sorry, go to the next question, Matt.
Thank you, Mary and Sam. So just to kind of follow up on for the next question, could you guys tell me, or this question is specifically for Sam, could you tell our audience what blockchain is being used today and how it specifically affects our economy?
Sure. So I guess the number one use case at the moment today is as an alternative payments network. Right. So if you're making a payment today, typically you're going to entrust your bank to do that. Right. You will go to the banking mobile app or the website, and you will say, please UBS, I would like to pay this person. And UBS has a variety of different payment networks that it can use in order to facilitate that transfer. And there are numerous different payment networks across the world. There are several in the United States that do different things and cost different amounts because they'll deliver at different speeds for different sums of money. Now, what distributed ledger has introduced is an alternative payments network, right? So if Maria and I both agree that we are going to use the Bitcoin network, and we both agree that Bitcoin is worth whatever we agree it's worth today, then I can send Maria 1 Bitcoin, and Maria would maybe send me whatever it is that I'd purchased online. I don't know, in my shopping, doesn't matter. So I can use that as a payments network. Now, what's interesting is, like I was saying before, you're not having to trust an intermediary. So I don't need to go to UBS to ask them to make that payment, to facilitate that payment. I don't need to trust UBS to send it to Maria's bank account. I can send it directly from me to Maria. It travels over the network. All of the participants in the network validate that I have 1 Bitcoin in my wallet that I can spend. And if I do, then they will agree to my proposal for that transaction. And a few minutes later, Maria will see that the transaction's completed. So I would say number one, most significant thing is as a payments network or a value exchange network. You could use that for all sorts of different use cases, right? Anytime you need to make a payment, if you think about that. The second example I would give is a bit more of a contrived example, which is it's being used to create new digital communities. And by that, I mean, people are gathering around a particular use case, a particular need, and putting funds, their own personal funds, towards the creation of a capability that is going to serve the community. So let me give you an example. I don't know, Filecoin. I'm picking one at random, right? Filecoin lets you store files, but you don't need to use Dropbox or Google or Amazon or any of the other file sharing centralized parties. Filecoin lets you store your files, but your files are broken up and distributed across thousands of people's computers and reassembled when you need them. So somebody came up with the idea of Filecoin, and they're using the distributed ledger as an architecture for structuring the payments of Filecoin for paying for the storage, but also the information about what data and what files are stored in what location, so that when somebody wants it back, they can that data can be reassembled. So I would say those were probably the two biggest: payments network and alternative communities. And if you go to a website like CoinMarketCap, for example, that'll show you the top thousands of ideas that people have about these new use cases that can be based off of this technology, that's enabled by this technology.
Thanks, Sam. And so just to take it back, or take it forward, actually, this question's for Mary and for Thomas as well. So how might crypto and blockchains have an economy, like an impact on the economy in 10 years' time?
Maria, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure.
Ladies first.
Thank you. So in terms of, I'm not sure if that would be like 10 years perspective, but the area that I would like to highlight is the concept of Web3. So basically like the evolution of the internet. And it is more about where internet is expected to go and can go thanks to the blockchain technology. But it is also about some of the changes that are already happening due to introduction of some blockchain-based applications and products. So when we talk about Web3, we are talking about the third stage of internet development. And to tell you shortly about the first version of its development was where the consumers were only able to perceive the information and developers would create the content. Then the Web3, which we are mostly currently using, which is the current stage when the users are not only able to consume the information, but also information and content, but also to create it. So this is how social media is functioning, that we are also using those platforms, and we are also able to create the content in it. And the next upcoming stage is, apart from only perceiving and producing content, users would be able to also possess it through the means, for example, when a product has a token, and this token is some sort of internal currency that allows you to have a voice in a particular product. So you're sort of creating it as well. And another big feature of it is that of the Web3 is that currently all the data of the users is possessed by the companies that collect the data, and they can use this data for different purposes, and they actually use it for monetizing it by, for example, creating some ads, targeted ads using the data. And this puts users at some sort of risk because they don't actually know how exactly their data is collected and is going to be used, etc. While with the Web3, and here the concept of decentralization is important, users would be able, their data wouldn't be possessed by a single source, but it would be distributed. So it would have more, in these terms, users would potentially have more security in regards of their data usage. Yeah, so this is about this area of how internet would be affected in a good way.
Yeah, so I personally believe that there is a huge impact, let's say, on economy in the next 10 years. I mean, let's say also looking back and also what Maria touched, did you know that in the past, let's say when the first computers were developed, that somebody quite famous said there is only a market, let's say, for 2 or 3 computers worldwide. Something similar was said, let's say, for the internet when it was created, or that 640 kilobytes of memory are totally enough for a computer. I mean, now today, every computer, even smartphone, has more power than what was, say, available in the past. And with the blockchain technology, I mean, it has really a huge potential, and it in the coming years it will be everywhere. what we solved in the recent years were, let's say, initial problems, what every new technology has. And now it's more and more adapted. A lot of, let's say, errors have ruled out. Also, there is more safety in the technology by having, let's say, regulatory rules already in place to make it easier also for companies, etc., to invest here. And I mean, we don't know, let's say, where the journey will go, but I personally believe that it will be a huge impact.
So I could add one as well. I suppose this is possibly down the road for those of you that have studied economics. And for those of you that haven't, maybe this is interesting all the same. But if you think back to what I was saying about it being an alternative payment network, for the central banks in each country, this is a challenge because it means that value is moving around over a network that they don't necessarily have control over, right? The Central Bank of England or the Swiss National Bank don't control Bitcoin, right? Nobody does. So there's a challenge there, and actually an economic and national response to that threat, if you want to call it, is something that's being explored at the moment called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. It's worth a Google. We won't have a chance to go into it in detail today, but most of the central banks around the world now are at least investigating the concept of a central bank digital currency. And it's very possible that it would be a blockchain-based solution. It may not be in the end, but it's very possible that it might be. Now, why do you care? Well, for those of you that did economics, you'll probably recognize the equation MV equals PQ. So that's a monetary supply equation. Now, if you remember what I was talking about earlier, the transactions can be programmable, right? We could write smart contracts. And if you have programmable money, then that means naturally it's going to move faster, right? I can automate transactions. I can automate transfers. I can create if this, then that equations for my money. So, if Gabe does really well in his next exams, he gets this money. He doesn't have to come back and trust me in the future. I can put this in a smart contract, and Gabe knows if he gets those scores, that money is automatically going to end up in his wallet instantaneously. So what happens is the speed of money moves faster. And that's the V of MV equals PQ. The velocity of the money goes up. So if the velocity of money goes up, but the supply of money stays the same, which is your M, then if you assume the prices of things go up, which is, prices of things stays the same as P, then Q has to go up. And Q is your GDP, which means if the velocity of money goes up, your GDP goes up. And when GDP goes up, that means nations are doing well. And when nations are doing well, they attract more business. And so businesses are naturally going to be attracted to countries whose GDP is growing faster because there'll be more opportunity. And so there's a possibility with simple economics that programmable money will create opportunities for the economy. So I think it's a bit more of I suppose an advanced discussion, right? It's not the availability of computing power. It's actually an impact on the core financial system and the way in which economies run.
I think this question leads very well to our next question, which is how come some of the maybe more unstable governments, such as we've seen in the news, Honduras picking up blockchain, how come those governments are choosing to, those countries rather, are choosing to adopt blockchains going forwards?
Yeah, I can start with that one as well. So I think this comes back to the first point I was making earlier, right? When I gave the sort of the funny Burger King example, you need to have trust in an economic system, right? I think if you look at a country like Switzerland or like the UK, we trust the Swiss National Bank, we trust the Bank of England, that they are not going to do anything that we would hope they wouldn't do, right? Irrational behavior. And I think that in less stable countries, part of that stability comes from potentially the irrational behavior of individuals. I'm not going to accuse anybody of criminal activities, but potentially that might be what's under the surface. And so where that takes place, that means a lack of trust, and a lack of trust leads to people trying to find alternative systems that they have more trust in. It doesn't mean they are going to trust it completely, but they may have more trust in that alternative. And to try and make that, an example, so Georgia, not the United States state, but Georgia, the country, they actually record land registry transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain. Why? Because their land registry department was known to be really quite fraudulent. You might go and buy a plot of land in Georgia, and then you go back there a month later and you find out that actually they didn't update the land registry, or it's been moved to somebody else and you had no idea about it. And the land registry is law, right? So they realized they're never going to have any foreign investors in their real estate industry unless they find a more trustful way of recording land registry transactions. So now what they do, in addition to recording it in their land registry book, they put the transaction also on the Bitcoin blockchain, and so somebody can have much more trust about the fact that they are and continue to be an owner of that piece of real estate. So it's all about the trust. Happy to hand over to others who may have an opinion as well.
Principle, I only can, let's say, yeah, correct. I have in principle nothing to add. And I think everybody who ever had to do international or cross-border money transaction knows how, let's say, difficult that can be. Let's say staying in the European, let's say, borders is, let's say, quite easy. But let's say going outside of the European Union is then might be quite a challenge. And especially, let's say, for small countries, or let's say also companies, if you need to do cross-border transaction, you don't want to involve too many, let's say, parties, and everybody takes some kind of commission, and also you don't want to have these big delays. And this will for sure, let's say, the blockchain technology will support that.
Thanks, Thomas and Sam. I'm afraid we have to move on to the last question. However, before I ask the last question, if any of the audience members have any questions for our speakers, just use the mentee code and send them off. So the last question is, could each of you give an example of how students watching this panel could start using blockchain in their daily lives?
Sure,
Well,
I'm happy to go first again. So I guess I've got a practical example, right? I personally learn a lot by doing, right? And so my example for you is one that you can get your hands dirty with. For those of you that, well, let's say you're going to use Chrome, right, as a browser, and you need to go into the Chrome App Store and download an extension or an app called MetaMask, METAMASK. Nothing to do with Meta, the Facebook renamed Metaverse. Nothing to do with that. So MetaMask. And MetaMask is a browser-based cryptocurrency wallet. Right? It sits inside your web browser. It will ask you to create an account. The account stays locally in a web browser, and you'll have a password. Once you've done that, in the browser window, you need to go to a website called Faucet, FAUCET.metamask.io. And a faucet, it gives you free cryptocurrencies. But what it's going to do, it's going to give you free cryptocurrencies for something called a test network. So think about it as a dummy network. It's not real money, but it enables you to learn, and you can do cryptocurrency transactions. And if you mess it up, you lost nothing. So in your MetaMask wallet, in the browser extension, you need to set your wallet to the testnet, and then you go to the faucet, you claim some money, and then the third thing you want to do is on your mobile phone, and you're going to download an app called Alpha Wallet, and in Alpha Wallet you can change the settings to testnet, and now you should have a go at making a transfer of the money you claimed from the faucet between your MetaMask wallet in your browser and your Alpha wallet on your phone. And just with those three things, you can experience a cryptocurrency transaction and you can learn without fear of losing any real money. It's also super useful if you want to start, for those of you that are much more advanced, start thinking about building a Web3 app, as Maria mentioned, sort of the term for this, a decentralized app or a DApp. And when you build it, you're going to build it on the testnet, and that MetaMask wallet and the testnet money, the testnet ether that you get, is going to help you in testing your app. So that'd be my recommendation because it's super hands-on, and you'll learn a lot by trying that out.
Thank you, Sam. We have to go really quickly because we'd like to ask. We've had 55 audience questions. We probably won't be able to get through so many of them, but I mean, shows how much interest there is on this topic. So I think Maria and Thomas, if you could please give us a quick tip for each of you, and then we'll try to go into the audience one as well.
2 tips if you want to know how it works all under the surface. I mean, get your hands dirty. There are a lot of tutorials on the internet that how to program your own smart contract, or let's say even run a node, let's say on the big networks. And if you just want to use it, I mean, also like Sam said, create a wallet, start sending around funds. Or now in all these computer games nowadays, there are also a lot of NFTs, and you can have your own skin for your Call of Duty soldier or your own sword for Diablo 4, etc. And I think this is also, yeah, quite a milestone and very interesting times that are ahead of us.
So,
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, Mary, would you just yeah, sorry, go.
A tiny thing that I would like to mention, maybe not in terms of using blockchain and crypto products already, but in terms of learning, you could start with reading some articles on Cointelegraph, which is one of the most well-known media on crypto, and they have a section called Cryptopedia, so basically like Wikipedia for crypto. So they explain all the concepts that we have mentioned today on a very like basic level, and they also have some articles on like how to buy an NFT or like some very, very basic actions, so you would be able to find some instructions there how to get into the space.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to add all of these links and everything that we've talked about today to probably Schoology or something like that, so that we can all access it. And now for some of the audience questions, I've seen a lot of them talk about the maybe negative impacts on the environment that blockchain, specifically crypto mining, causes. And since YFS looks a lot at the SDGs, we might want to talk about some of the negative impact of this. So if anyone would like to take it, I'll add the spotlight.
I can go first, sure. So yes, so Bitcoin is one of the cryptocurrencies that has chosen something called proof of work as a consensus algorithm, which means that in order to demonstrate that you can validate a transaction, you have to find a random number, and your computer is set about to find that random number, which takes computing power and therefore takes electricity. Now, the ongoing debate in this space is actually the impact of that is driven by the source of that electricity that you use. So one argument is that actually quite a lot of the electricity that is used to mine proof of work cryptocurrencies comes from renewable sources. Obviously, if it doesn't come from renewable sources, so you have a coal power fire station that is generating that electricity, that's pretty dirty indeed. So that ratio at the moment varies tremendously. And we've seen over the last year, China put a significant push for miners to move out of China. And China at the same time is one of the largest users still of coal-fired powered stations. So we honestly don't know the proportion at this stage of renewable energy to dirty energy that is being used. However, there's work going on right now, not for Bitcoin, but for other blockchains, to move away from proof of work to something called proof of stake, which uses considerably less electricity. And so I suppose the hope would be to champion more energy efficient approaches to running blockchains for the future. Don't know if anybody else wants to add to that, or if you want to flip to another question.
Are there any?
Maybe just one sentence. So, I mean, it's all about security in the end. If you have, let's say, traditional money, you make it quite, let's say, hard to, let's say, to fake it, because everybody else could then print money. And so that the effort you put in there is, let's say, more expensive than just the, let's say, the single, let's say, coin, or let's say 20 francs piece that you give away. And if you would use too less effort to, let's say, do changes to the blockchain, then it would also be easier to do any kind of, let's say, of manipulation. So it's always some kind of energy consumption that you cannot go beyond.
Thank you.
Not beyond, but below.
There's a few questions about how and why like different cryptocurrencies have value. Where does this come from? And so if you'd like to answer this one.
Okay, I'm happy to take it again. I think at the moment there are two drivers. There's an intrinsic value, and then there's a speculative value. And I think the intrinsic value comes from data that you can actually get off of websites like Sentiment or Sandbase, and they show you the number of developers, the number of commits, so is work being done on that blockchain, the number of transactions, so is it being used, the number of users, the number of wallets, all that sort of stuff, right? So obviously, if you were building Facebook from scratch today, the value that you would associate with it is directly proportional to the number of people that are logging in and the number of messages they're sending one another, right? So that is a very good source of information to drive whether something is worth anything. The alternative, or the other contributor to prices, is simple speculation. People like gambling, and when something goes up, the expectation is it's going to carry on going up. Herd mentality adds to that, and obviously that adds to volatility as well. And I think it's very hard to determine the combination of those as to what really is driving the price. But you can have a look at that sort of intrinsic value as your fallback value.
Thank you, Sam. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, and that's the end of the session we have with our guests. Thank you everyone for listening and sending in your questions, and thank you to our speakers for sharing their knowledge, experience, and ideas. I hope you all enjoyed our panel today, and we were able to improve your understanding on blockchains and Bitcoin. For ISETL people, please remain in your period 6 class, and for everybody else, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.